Advisory Committee meeting for the school year. And presenting today will be myself, Superintendent Ruben Reyes, Chairperson for the DELAC Committee, John Raven, and our Chief Business Officer, Gerardo Castillo, will be joining us as well. So before we get started, there's a couple of things that at the end of this meeting, some procedures and things that I need to do for those of you who are part of the DELAC. So if you are a DELAC committee member, that meaning you're from your ELAC, you're an English learner parent, and you attend ELAC meetings at your school site, and you've been coming, even if you haven't been coming to all the DELAC meetings, but if you're a parent of an English learner, we're going to have a vote at the end on a component that we need to present to you. To do that, what I'd like you to do is you're going to be voting in your chat box. So it won't be a live verbal vote, it'll actually be a written vote. So if you are on Zoom and if you do not see your chat box, you should see like a speaking bubble, either at the top of your screen or the bottom of your screen. If you don't see the speaking bubble, you'll see 3 dots side by side, probably to the far right corner of your screen. If you click on those dots, you should see a direction to where it says chat. If you click on that, that is where you can put in your vote. So a window will open up with a little bar, and that's where you can also put in any questions that you might have as we go along. So to start with, Superintendent Ruben Reyes will be talking about our operations update. After that, I'll be talking about federal funding that we receive and our revised English Learner Master Plan.
Great. Hi, everyone. Do you want me to share my screen?
Does he need to share his screen for them to see the agenda? Yes, please, Ruben.
Okay, I can do that. Okay, let me make this a little bit bigger. There we go. So the operations update is really kind of what the state is now requiring for our LCAP document. So the state recognizes that we are functioning very differently now because of the COVID-19 pandemic. And so rather than have us follow the regular procedure for completing an LCAP and having that go to our community and then approved by our board by the end of June, what they have asked us to do now by the end of June is what they are calling this operations update. So this operation update really focuses on what the impact on our school district COVID-19 has had. And there's some very specific things that we need to talk about. And so we'll talk about that. But so, as I said, we've suspended the LCAP until later. December 15th now is when we will have to complete our document. And then when we have to then do our 3-year entire document, that will come at the end of this upcoming school year on June 30th of 2021. So I think you're all pretty aware of this, but just to review what it is that the Robla School District has been doing in response to our school closure and the pandemic in our community. We, as you know, have been delivering our distance learning program. And that distance learning program allows every student's classroom teacher, so whoever your classroom teacher was during the regular school year is the teacher who provides you with the distance learning. So we developed a distance learning program. Our teachers were trained, and the teachers use generally Google Classroom to do that. Zoom, as we're using today, to deliver those lessons. I know you're all involved in that piece. And we are following the same curriculum that we would be following during the regular school year. Of course, things have changed a bit because of the situation, but we're using the same math curriculum, the same language arts curriculum. We are still following the same state standards, although we have really identified key standards, understanding that we don't have as many hours with the children as we would have in a regular school day. So we have really focused our attention on some key standards at each grade level, and that's what the teachers are focusing on. Now, in terms of meeting the needs of our specific populations, the state wants us to call out English learners and foster youth and low-income students, but all of our student groups, whatever group they may be part of, whether it's an ethnic group or a socioeconomic group or students with disabilities, we deliver the same levels of services and distance learning as we do in the regular school setting. Now, of course, it's different with distance learning, but our specialists, our EL support teachers, our enrichment teachers, our intervention teachers, and then of course all of our other support people such as our social workers and psychologists continue to interact with our students in new ways, but either through video chat such as this or through telephone calls, and we are supplementing the regular instruction by having those specialists be involved in distance learning as well. So that's the instructional side. In terms of the meals, I hope that you're also all aware in terms of how we've been doing that. We have been delivering our meals to our neighborhoods on our school buses. So we have had a plan that has been pretty much in place since the week that schools closed, where our cafeteria staff prepares meals for children, both breakfast and lunch, and starting this week, supper as well. And then we have a schedule that we follow, and those meals are delivered to our families at our regular bus stops. Initially, our program started where we were delivering meals every day, and that was not something that we could maintain over time. So we now deliver meals on Mondays and Wednesdays. On Monday, we deliver food for Monday and Tuesday, and then on Wednesday, we deliver food for Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. So we're really pleased to know that we are keeping our families fed. The children anyway. Our program does not provide for feeding adults, but we are keeping our students fed. We conducted a survey recently that we did a staff survey as well as a family survey for parents. And it's great to see that our families have not been going hungry, and they've confirmed that in their survey results. So we're excited to see that that program keeps everybody going. And then the final area in the operations update is that the state wanted every district to explore ways to possibly supervise children, provide some supervision for children during school closure. They encouraged us to partner with outside agencies to look into how this might happen. That has not happened in the Robla School District. We have not been able to find the partners, nor do we have the staff, nor the setting to be able to provide any type of supervision. So in the Robla School District, that supervision has not been possible thus far. And we have relied then on the families to provide the supervision for their children during the school closure time. So that's pretty much what we have in our operations update. I'm happy to answer any questions that anybody might have about any of that.
Again, if you have any questions, you can type them in the chat box. And we're going to wait for just a second because we do have a little bit of a delay on the YouTube feed. Will I be back to sharing the PowerPoint? Will I be going back to sharing the PowerPoint? No questions coming up? Okay. Okay, it looks like we have no questions. So we're going to go ahead and move forward. Thank you, Mr. Reyes.
Welcome.
The next thing we're going to talk about is our federal funding. So in addition to the normal funding that we receive, advance here. In addition to the funding that we receive for our general program, so we have what we call general fund dollars that come from the state of California, we also receive 4 different pockets of funds that are specifically designated for specific student groups. And this is federal funding that comes mainly for the purpose of serving English learners and students living in poverty. This type of funding is determined on a per pupil basis, meaning the number of English learners or students living in poverty that you have in your district determines how much funding your district will receive. So you receive it per pupil. And it's called Title funds, so they're entitlements, and they're listed as Title 1, 2, 3, and 4. The idea of these title funds is that you cannot use these funds to maintain or run your regular program, your base program. They're funds that are supposed to be used on top of your base program to supplement the program that you have to meet the needs of these special groups that tend to be performing lower in academic standards than those not in these specific groups. So the first type of funding we receive is called Title I funding. This is the largest pot of funds that the district receives. And this funding is based on the free and reduced lunch count and the national poverty census. So they do look at what our children living in poverty census is, but it's not a direct count. It's more of a combination of looking at how parents report for the free and reduced lunch count program, as well as looking at the national poverty census. So the federal government sends us money through the state of California, through the California Department of Ed, and it goes out to school districts based on this information. With the funds that we receive here, 85% of the funds need to go directly out to the students, and again, it goes out by a per pupil amount. A 15% is set aside for the indirect costs and the maintenance or the administrative of the program, and an additional 1% is also set aside for parent involvement, but this 1% does go out to the school sites by a per pupil amount as well. We also hold some dollars for homeless services as a requirement, and then we have students who are living in poverty that may not be attending a Robla school, but they're attending a nonprofit school, and so we are required that those funds follow the students that generate the money, so that we do distribute some of the Title I dollars out to support the students that are in nonprofit schools. The money does not go to the nonprofit school itself. What the money goes to is supplemental services for those students. So for example, it might be after school tutoring, it might be during school tutoring, it might be additional materials for those students. But again, it's generated in terms of, do they live in the Robla School District, and are they students of poverty? The way that we spend the money within the district varies, but as I said, majority of the funds we try to send out to the school sites. Because we run school-wide programs, we do some activities that come through the district office to ensure that all school sites have equitable services. So for example, one school site might have a higher number of English learners and or a higher number of students living in poverty, but yet we are running a school-wide program, so even if your school site has 30%, or actually for living in poverty, it's more like numbers like between 92 and 85%. So if you have 85% and not 92%, you still get the same type of services that the school that has 92%. And then there's some guidelines in terms of how and what we can spend these dollars on. These dollars show up in each school site's school plan, the single plan for student achievement, on what the plan is for how they want to spend the dollars that they receive. So some of the ways that the sites have used the dollars are through after-school tutoring, school enrichment programs. We've had 2 school sites that have invested in some professional learning with the GLAD. We have a homeless bilingual liaison to help support our homeless students. We do parent involvement activities, teacher enrichment, the enrichment teachers, the professional learning support teachers, and some of our intervention teachers are multi-funded through some of these Title I dollars. Multi-funded means that they're not completely funded by Title I dollars, but Title I dollars help to ensure that we can have these same services throughout the district. The second type of funding we receive is called Title II funding, and the purpose of Title II is for improving teacher quality and professional development or professional learning. And these funds generally help to pay for our Director of Curriculum and Assessment so that we can coordinate those services and have a strategic plan for professional learning, as well as to ensure that we have a program for our incoming new teachers as well. She oversees all those components as well as the assessment component of it with our CASP testing and our curriculum. Title III dollars are dollars for English learners. Again, it's a per pupil calculation, so it's based on how many English learners we have in the district and how many English learners are on each school site. There are two pots in the English Learner Fund. The second pot is called Title III Immigrant, and this is based on solely on if a child is an immigrant student, meaning they've been in a California school for less than 3 years total. Those students generate this extra little pot. And there's a formula for this. So some years we in Robla receive these funds and some years we do not. For the past 3 years, our immigrant count has been going up. We have about 42 students in the district that are immigrant students. So we have been receiving some of these funds. Again, these are to supplement the services for English learners, so we cannot use these funds to give our basic designated and integrated language development. We need to utilize these funds for programs beyond that. Some of the ways that the district has been using the funds is we've been having 3 extra hours of library time beyond the normal school day where parents can access the library. And we've had bilingual support personnel in those libraries to help with those parents accessing, as well as doing some homework support for the families where the parents have access to a bilingual person to ask them questions about the students' homework. We've used funds to help pay for another intervention assistant for our dual language program as our population of English learners increases at Glenwood School. And we have, actually it hasn't increased. Glenwood has always had such a high population that it's pretty much stayed exactly the same. There are 50% English language learners, with the majority of those students being Spanish speaking. And so we have a Spanish speaking intervention assistant to work with the intervention teacher and the classroom teachers to assist those students in Spanish language. We purchase supplemental materials, professional learning, and we do some parent outreach activities periodically. We try to generally at least once a year run a Latino Family Literacy Project, which is a program that helps build literacy and family connectedness to the school. And the last pot of funds that we receive is called Title IV. This is a newly received pot of funds. When I say newly is that it came back into play in the last 2 years. So again, it's a formula, and it has some very specific ways that we need to use the funds. It's a little bit more flexible in that we can use the funds not by a per pupil amount, but we do have to use it in 3 different ways. One is to promote a well-rounded educational program, and one is for safe and healthy students. The second is to ensure that we have effective use of technology. So this year, oops, I guess I didn't put a slide on that one. There we go. So this year, some of the things that these dollars has helped fund is the nutrition field trips that each school grade level has, SAMI circuits throughout the district. A Touch of Understanding has been coming out to Taylor Street School and has been out at other school sites over the years. The Renaissance Learning Program is funded through this. And then it's also helped to pay for some of the social emotional learning that we've been able to have in the district. So these are the funds that we receive, like I said, for supplemental on top of. If anybody has any questions about these funds, again, you can put it in the chat box. So in order for the district to receive these funds, we need our District English Language Advisory Committee to approve us applying for the funds from the state and federal government. So at this time, I'm going to call on John Raven to come forward, and he's going to actually call for a vote. If you are the parent of an English learner at any of our school sites, you are welcome to vote on whether or not we apply for these funds.
And actually, since this is a DAC or LCAP PAC DELAC meeting, actually the site council members that are also present are part of the voting as such, because it is Title I funds. At this time, I would be more than glad to entertain a motion to approve the application for the federal funding for this year.
So if I could have somebody who's out there in our audience,
And thank you, Brittany, for that. And do I hear a second? Do I have a second to the motion? Okay, now I've got two Shellys, so sorry about that.
all right.
Thank you. Okay, at this time, if there's no further questions or discussions about the CONAP, all in favor of approving of this document, please, at this time, go to the chat box and sign it yes. Those that are opposed to the application, obviously you would type no. And that,
So as
You know-
you're each looking for your chat box and typing in your yes or no, we're going to record or keep this as a permanent record that we did have this vote because it is a requirement to apply for these funds. The next step would be that once we look at the votes, if we are approved, we would take this to our board of trustees to also approve the application of funds for the district. Any questions or comments? Give me 1 second because I am receiving some text from some of our EL teachers, so I want to make sure they're not having a. Okay.
So the but the comment is in the bottom of the screen. Somebody could not see that.
There's a comment. You see a comment, Gerardo?
No, I just want to make sure that I want to tell them where to say yes. You know, it's in the bottom of the screen. Sometimes you don't see it. You have to put your mouse there in order to see the chat button to say yes or no.
Right, so at the beginning of the meeting, again, if you
Yeah.
are looking for the chat box, it'll either appear at the top of your screen or the bottom of your screen. It looks like a voice bubble, a conversation bubble. Sometimes your screen, you might not see anything. If you touch your screen, that menu will pop down from the top or the bottom. So if anybody's having any trouble with that, that's how you find your chat box. Also, if you don't see the bubble, if you see the 3 little dots in the far right corner, click on that and you should see an additional to your menu and it'll say chat there. All right. Okay, we're going to move on to the next item. The last thing on our agenda is that each district also should have a plan for how they look to serve their English language learners. This plan has recently been updated. It's been a year-long process updating this plan. And part of the reason that this has taken so long to update and revise is because there's been a lot of state changes and federal changes in the world of English learners. So basically, there's been a very large policy shift where we used to have a policy that everything had to be taught in English, and we really weren't honoring a child's home language. It's a much more well-rounded approach, much more equity-based approach, and we have a new master plan that addresses what we're doing to make sure and ensure that we are honoring children's home language, as well as continually trying to ensure that we are teaching them English and giving them a high, well-rounded, rigorous academic program. I'm going to put up a slide that has a link to the EL master plan. This plan, there it is. This plan is on our website. It's available to review until June 24th. It will then go to our board for approval. You can access it with the link that's provided there, or you can also go to our district website, go to district information, scroll down to title and specialized programs, and then choose EL services when you get to the title and specialized programs page. And you can access the plan from there as well. There is my email address if anybody has any questions or comments regarding the plan, that you can email me and I'll respond to those. That is everything I had for you today. I appreciate you all being here. Again, if there's any questions or comments before we leave, we're going to be giving this same presentation in Spanish, starting at 4:15 for our families that prefer and are more comfortable with a Spanish presentation. You're welcome to join us again, but it is the same presentation, just in Spanish. Any questions or comments? Okay. All right, thank you, everybody. Appreciate you coming.